Hey Macquarie, I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking to you about believing that God will do what he says he will. So I've been reading Luke lately, and there's a couple of stories that I really love that come straight after each other, and they're really similar situations, but they have really different, the people involved have really different responses. So in Luke chapter 1, which is actually the Christmas story, we start off with Zechariah, who is visited by the angel Gabriel. And when he comes, Zechariah is really scared. Gabriel says to him, "Don't be scared." And then he says that you're going to have a son. He tells him to name him John. He tells him a little bit about how John's life is going to be used as part of God's story. And then John responds. And then straight after that, but what's actually about 6 months later, something really similar happens to Mary. So Gabriel visits her. She's fearful. He tells her that she's going to have a son. He tells her to name him Jesus. And obviously Jesus plays a really significant role in God's story as well. But after that, that's where the stories shift a little bit. So I'm going to read to you Zechariah's response. He says, "How can I be sure of this? I'm an old man and my wife is well along in years." The angel said to him, "I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God and I have been sent to speak to you and tell you this good news. And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their appointed time." So that's what happens with Zechariah. Now let's read how Mary responds. So she says, "How will this be?" Mary asked the angel, "since I'm a virgin?" The angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come on you and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God." So when you read it in English, it kind of sounds like they're both doubting, and there's some unbelief there. But as you can see, Zechariah, he's silent until John's born, and Mary is not. And if we read a little bit further on, we actually see that Mary's response was one of belief. She wasn't asking, "How will this be?" because she didn't believe. She believed, and so she was asking how it was going to happen. So later on it says, she's blessed who believed that the Lord will fulfill his promises to her. So we've got two really similar situations, and one where someone doesn't believe and one where someone does. Now, normally, I'm more of a Zechariah. If God speaks to me about things, most of the time God speaks about things that, need God to happen. So I will often look at sort of the natural and weigh it up and sort of think, well, it's unlikely, and I'll doubt a little bit. But coming into 2020, I was a Mary. God gave me this word for the year. Actually, he gave me a vision, and he doesn't usually give me visions, but he gave me a vision this year. And I went into this year like Mary. I just believed it was going to happen. And for the first couple of months, I could actually see it starting to happen. And then March came around and the whole world changed, and it was really hard to still believe that it was going to happen. In fact, I was just like, I don't know how this is going to happen in COVID, when we're locked down, and God's spoken about these things that he's going to use me for this year, and I can't see how it's going to happen. But I still just trusted him, because I just remembered this one person telling me that, we see things, if it's like a parade, we see the parade from the street level where we just see each part of the parade passing. But God sees time like a parade looking down from the top of a building where he can see the whole parade. And I just thought, okay, God knew what was going to happen this year. I don't know about you, but it's really different to what we expected, or what I expected. And I realized that if God said this stuff was going to happen this year, it was going to happen anyway. And what's happened now that I'm starting, the COVID and the pandemic's gone on for a few months, and I'm looking back now, and where I started off thinking, I don't know how God's going to do it in COVID, I'm actually realizing it's because of the pandemic that God is able to do what he said he would. And it does look really different to, I thought about it in my mind, what's it going to look like in the way I imagined was a pre-pandemic world. But actually the way God has used this year, he's actually doing exactly what he said he would. And in both of these stories, God does say exactly what he said he would do. He does do exactly what he said. But the difference in the waiting is that Elizabeth had a really different experience to Zechariah. She was able to share what God had said to her and she was excited, whereas Zechariah was really quiet. So I want to encourage you, if God has spoken some things this year and you've been a little bit discouraged and thought, how is it going to happen? This year doesn't look like it. Maybe God won't do it in spite of COVID, but maybe he'll actually use COVID to make it happen. So I hope that encourages you today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all very soon.